Welcome to Sports Doc Talk. I'm Will Sanchez, along with our orthopedic sports medicine specialist, the doctor. Oh, by the way, before we get started, and it's always a great topic that we're going to have here. But before we get started, congratulations on getting recognized, especially in the Latino community. So just tell our fans real quick, because apparently you're getting recognized weekly right now because you're so dope. But tell us a little bit about that honor that you've just been given.
So I was honored to get Castle Conley, which is actually one of the ones when I first started, I really was excited to get. You don't really know you're going to get it until they email you. And then Castle Conley does a Latino and Hispanic section. They have different sections for different diverse backgrounds. So they selected me for top doctor for Latinos as well. So it was kind of cool. I think my dad was pumped about that. I think I put in my
Yes,
post, but
yes.
my dad was born in Brazil. He came over here when he was 9. He learned how to learn English. He ended up doing really well, and now I'm here. So my mom's from Jersey, so she didn't have to do the same type of stuff, but nonetheless, and grew up a Giants fan, so this is why we still root for them.
Yeah, congratulations, man. It's you're achieving a lot, and just to get recognized like that and see what you're doing, it's important. It's great for Latinos to see, the possibilities, and having representation in every field is important. So it matters. And not only is it a great honor for you, but it's a great honor for someone else that recognizes that. Anyway, enough. No more compliments. I'm completely done with it.
I'm
This is
blushing. We got to move on. Let's go on to let's
hogwash.
make it fun.
Yeah, your cheeks are a little red, man. It might be all that little sun. The sun's going away. We're about to get the clouds and rain, so no more sun for us.
I know.
So, we were talking about it, and once again, another scary sight, right? And this time it was less traumatic. We're talking about Tua Tagovailoa suffering another concussion. Just to kind of give you a recap, last year he didn't have a concussion that we were aware of, but the year prior against against Buffalo, he sustained an injury in Miami where he was hit. He got up, he stumbled. We all clearly saw that this injury he sustained had everything that you would deem to be a concussion. The doctors approved him to play the following week against the Bengals. Since then, after the Bengal injury, which was a nasty injury when he was sacked and flung to the turf, laid out there. For those that don't know, he suffered what's called fencing, and I'm going to tee you up in a second for you to explain what fencing is. And now, once again, he has suffered another concussion, 3 concussions on the biggest stages, one on the Sunday afternoon game, another one on the Monday night game, and then again on another primetime event where the world kind of watches, since NFL kind of rules our universe here in the United States. First off, describe what fencing is, and 2, what was the first thought you had when you saw that Tua sustained another concussion, a 3rd concussion that we're aware of in this short time frame?
So, yeah, I mean, first off, fencing, whenever you get traumatic injuries or traumatic brain injuries, it kind of goes back to sort of your prenatal state. And so when you're getting hit, this idea of fencing is you flinging back the arms, everything's just sort of like abnormal motion. Actually, like the fencing position, like when you fence in the Olympics, that's kind of the idea of what it looks like. It's not good.
Yeah.
And we had this entire podcast a year and a half ago. You guys can listen to our episode about this exact same injury. And so when this happened again, and all of a sudden now the articles are coming out about concussions, it just has to come up again. We have to have the conversation because this is not just a hot topic because it's a hot topic because it's a good player. It's a hot topic because we're seeing a bad injury and a difficult situation for someone like Tua as to what to do. You have the media spoken people that are saying retire, retire, but you also, you have no idea what's going on behind closed doors, right? We're just seeing we're seeing just the tip of the iceberg. And we've seen the shows, movies, Concussion. We've talked about this. We've had Dr. David Smith on here talking about ways to reduce traumatic brain injury in these sort of events. And now we're having another thing come up, and it was on the stage, and it's not like he got up and he was dizzy. He went into fencing position again, which is just this is just not a good thing.
Yeah, for me, it was really scary because if you look at the hit, and for those that haven't seen it, just go back to playing against Buffalo. He's rushing for a first down. He's trying to get close to the end zone. He runs into, of all people, Damar Hamlin, which we've talked about, that sustained a life-threatening injury on the field in Cincinnati also, just a little over a year ago. And the contact was not extreme. And that's really what kind of made me go, this is not good. This wasn't a defensive player coming at him and coming with the crown of his head, banging his head or anything like that. Tua actually ran into DeMar's chest, which, that's scary itself because that's how he sustained this injury. Just was running, ducked into it, ran into his chest and collapsed. DeMar, it was the softest tackle pretty much. It's almost like he's just cradling him as he's running into him to tackle him. And the fact that he had this concussion and his body had that reaction, went into this fencing state. And that for me was scary because I'm saying if he got hurt like this on a tackle play, that when you look at the NFL, it is a non-violent type of tackle play. I mean, where do we go from here when it comes to this man and this injury?
I mean, the problem you're going to have too is who's going to clear him, right?
Mm,
They'll find somebody, but like you've been seeing, I was just bringing up my partners. You've been seeing these massive lawsuits in the NFL, right? There was the one for the Philadelphia Eagles, so bad, the lawsuit was so bad that the Philadelphia Eagles got dropped by Rothman Institute. Like that just doesn't happen. Like on the news, they say we are no longer going to cover the Philadelphia Eagles, and they had to find, they scrambled and found an old doctor that did them. And I'm sure the doctor's great, but it's not Rothman Institute. And so
For
that's
for
another
those that
side
don't
thing.
know, I'm sorry to interrupt. For those that don't know, can you explain that? Rothman Institute and who
So
they are.
Rothman Institute is one of the biggest orthopedic places. I trained at special surgery. You have Rothman down there in the Philadelphia area, but now they basically run the whole East Coast. And their main hub is in Philadelphia, actually across the street from where I went to med school in Penn. And they're known for just being really big powerhouse for orthopedics. And they've got a number of teams. I think they do the Flyers. They used to do the Eagles, and they have
Mm,
really good surgeons. They're really good guys. And they got a massive lawsuit. We're not here to talk about medical legal of football, but
yeah,
they got
yeah.
a massive lawsuit and they dropped the Eagles and they announced it on on the ESPN and all these other shows that they're dropping because of that lawsuit, because it was the largest lawsuit in the history of the NFL. And so now if you see this situation where you have a player that got two injuries, another concussion, you know, you clear him, he goes back out there and gets another one, all of a sudden he has no cognitive ability, some other things have happened. Again, I don't want to predict this. The brain is scary. We have no idea which way it goes. You've seen
Yeah,
these boxers get hit repeated times. They're getting hit more than obviously this.
yeah.
Um, but you clear him to go back, and then he has another instance, another week or two, and now he's like out for another season. They find some way to let him go, get him pushed off. I mean, the Dolphins are kind of screwed in this situation, anyways. We saw well they played last week. Um,
Yeah, yeah, they look terrible
this is a
against the
really
Seahawks.
difficult
Yeah,
situation, and if he doesn't retire himself, if he has to get medically retired for him to have all that money, and it's a lot of money, like $120 million, I think, is on the table. So this is a really difficult situation because you have medical legal side from the doctors, you have the Dolphins, which I know they care about him. So I'm not going to here to talk about the NFL being the
yeah,
big
yeah,
bad
yeah.
person, but at the same point, they want to win. So they want to
It's a
maximize stuff, and
business.
this is just
Yeah,
difficult. This is a business. This is just a difficult situation, and now you have players, and we used to see Steve Young just get smashed every single game, right?
yeah.
And just
Brett Favre.
concussion after concussion. Brett
Oh,
Favre, concussion, concussion. It's no longer that way. We know the risks. We've seen it way too many times. We've seen shows about this. There's, we're not going to bring up too much today, but you got the
yeah,
League of the Niles article, the PBS special that we just watched. I mean, this
yeah.
isn't ending. This is not going away. We are looking for new things, and as we've seen, there is so much technology out there, and we still can't stop it. I mean, we brought this up. Tua did. I think I showed you he was practicing jujitsu classes to learn how to fall and
Correct.
hit the turf better. That's a really great thing that they talked about, but there's just no freaking way that's going to stop him from getting. If he's got baseline, I mean, this wasn't a hit, like you said. This
Correct.
wasn't a traumatic thing. He didn't
Yep.
smash his brain. And I don't care how well you learn how to fall. Like if you get hit blindside, it doesn't matter who you're the best athlete in the world. You're not going to see it coming. It's all about, when you do jujitsu, right? I have take care of a lot of jujitsu people. They see their opponent. They know what their opponent's going to do, right? It's like MMA too. You see what they're going to do. I mean, they may be fast, they may do something, but they're coming at you. They're not blindsiding you in the ring. It's a
Yeah.
totally different thing. So, I think we can do whatever. We'll talk about some preventative measures, but again, we keep seeing upgraded helmets, upgraded protocols, and there's a reason for that because we still haven't gotten the answer.
Yeah. I'm going to be selfish here, and I want to be clear and let our listeners know. Right. I'm going to give you a selfish point. Right. And this is my selfish take on this. His injury and the way he has suffered this injury in front of everyone has almost become not fair. It's not fair to his teammates. It's not fair to his opponents. And it's not fair to the fans that every time this man drops back to pass or starts running, that you are going to think about his safety. And that is what has happened when I've watched him play. When he started taking off running, I felt like the announcers were almost saying slide. The fact that Damar Hamlin did not take a shot on him, right? That you're running, you got a quarterback, and usually it's like, hey, he's
Done. Yeah.
free game. Let's take him out. You didn't see that. And for his teammates to now, whether it's blocking, lineman blocking, or him getting sacked, the coaching staff, whatever it is, his teammates have to look at this player back there saying, I hope today is not the day. His opponents that are trained to be violent in this sport are saying, I hope I'm not the one. And for fans saying, I hope I'm not going to witness anything on the field that is going to be lasting. And we've seen different injuries. We've seen bad injuries. We've seen Dennis Bird, Corey Stinger. We've seen men paralyzed on the field. And what that does, we saw what happened with Damar Hamlin and everyone just being emotional. But almost to the point now, if Tua is back under center, there is no way as a football fan that you're not watching that game saying, I hope that we don't see something today. And that's my selfish
100%.
take.
But it's true. I mean, I think he's going to be back. I think someone's going to clear him.
Yep.
They'll find a neurologist to clear him. That's the NFL. And I don't think he's going to retire. Yeah, I mean, I just don't see it. I mean, it's just not a good situation. So,
Yep.
I think I brought it up to you, but there have been players that have retired before. We had the original one that's the Luke Kuechly or whatever. It was the guy from
the
Panthers.
Carolina
He's the one
Panthers.
that
Carolina
just
Panthers.
recently retired.
Yep, linebacker, same thing. A lot of injuries, had concussions. Probably borderline Hall of Famer. If you're a Panthers fan, you're saying definitely Hall of Famer. I mean, a guy that made it to the league out of, I believe it was Boston College, and became the captain of the team and went to a Super Bowl with Cam Newton. Yeah, and same thing. Had to leave the game due to those injuries, and we saw some bad ones. You mentioned the Eagles. Lane Johnson, starting left tackle for the Eagles, concussion, right? Devontae Smith, a nasty, nasty concussion where he was hit from behind and his helmet came flying off. And he experienced some of that fencing as well. I mean, scary, scary stuff. So the fact that you mentioned the Philadelphia Eagles, now they've got two major injuries right now. The Devontae Smith, that was really, really serious. He's not a big guy. I mean, he's lucky if he's $190. I mean, he is a skinny wide receiver, and you wish him the best. I wanted to put up there for those that are watching and not just listening. I'm putting up the 5 phases for the NFL concussion protocol, and I'll just kind of go through them real quick. And then I want to ask you about this protocol and also whether you have a similar protocol since you are a team doctor as well, and maybe some of the symptoms that you see and what you expect from before you clear players. So phase 1, symptom limited activities, light aerobic exercise. Phase 2 is aerobic exercise, over 20 minutes of running, stationary bike under supervision. Phase 3, football specific exercise like non-contact drills, strength training, cone drills. Phase 4, club-based non-contact training. So that's participation, running, throwing, catching, still non-contact. And then phase 5 is pretty much full participation in practice with any restrictions. If any of the player's symptoms return at any point during any of the phases, they will return to the previous phase of the protocol. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so this is important, and I think we brought this up. We've had a few concussion episodes just because it's such a hot topic, even though
Yeah.
it's not,
Yeah.
it's an orthopedic thing, but it's not really like, we don't see these every day as an orthopedic surgeon, especially sports surgeon. But if you take care of teams and players, you're going to have to know how to deal with this, right? Because it's just the nature of the beast. There's a neurologist on the field during the high school games. Sometimes the college games, there's no neurologist. NFL, yes, but different
Yeah.
animal.
Yeah.
So those phases, those 1 through 5, it used to be, I think, actually 7. So it was always hard, and it may not have been NFL level that had the 7, but you can see that each one of those steps is really important, and they're monitoring for symptoms. You always say, like, I don't know if they're going to clear the protocol, right? So they go phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. All of a sudden, player gets some symptoms, lose a day, go backwards, and that's why you kind of have like injury on Sunday really starts on Monday, right? They may not be cleared, right? But
Yeah.
if they have 5 days, they can be like Friday. You hear Friday, Saturday, oh, they cleared the protocol, right? And I don't know. I want to say they're strict, but I don't know how it works. If the guy had very minimal symptoms, they pull him out of the game. They go phase 1, 2 in 2 days, in one day. I don't.
Yeah.
The problem is this is a really fancy little page,
Yeah.
right? But how does this is not always the
It's
case.
not
And
exact
the other
science,
thing
right?
the other thing is, what about like training in hot facilities versus cold facilities, and how are you gonna have symptoms, right? You get a concussion, but you also have a little bit of heat induced stuff, but you gotta be careful about like when you're skipping these phases. So this is a guideline.
That's interesting.
It's
Yeah.
important to have it. We're much more stringent on it in high school and college because there's just less to lose by missing a game. Like my players get hurt and they're out. And they're not out. They're not back until I feel really strongly they're going to be safe, right? It just
You're out.
doesn't matter. It just
Yep.
it,
It
I know they
doesn't.
all play for the championship. I want all the kids to do well, but I sure as heck don't want another kid to. If I saw a kid fence, I would never let him. I would never. That would be done for the season because it's just not worth it, right? And the NFL is a different animal,
Yeah.
right? He's got millions of dollars on the line. He's an adult. He's got an agent, right? Like This is. There's not just. This is not.
Right.
It's we always talk about this. We treat everybody the same, but unfortunately, the pros, it's just a different ball game.
Yeah.
Right? There's just way too much money, way too much on the line, and they're adults, right? My
Yeah.
kids on the field, my cat got a kid got hurt. He's got 15 years old. They got to ask the parents for permission to do something,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
it's just different strokes. But
And,
anyhow,
and we talk about it all the time. They're built different, right? I cannot do what they do. I cannot get into that mindset. And for them to always have that winning mindset of, I can do this at the highest level where 99.9% of the people that play the sport can't reach, right? They cannot reach that level. So you have to be built different. So that's another part of it where that's one of the things too, is the ultimate competitor, right? I'm going to get out there. My team, imagine him sitting on the couch watching that game against the Seahawks going, I can't help my team. They look like a bunch of scrubs out there. If I was out there, we could probably win this game. I could get the ball to Tyreek Hill. I can do these things. I could go in there and support my brotherhood, you know, and we've seen them compete at every level. And you talk about it all the time. These professional athletes are built different. And in all of the elements that you're talking about, what makes it so hard between the business, the mindset, getting cleared, being an adult. I can't imagine, being that team doctor or at this point, I'm assuming he's going to go to multiple specialists and doctors for them to say, okay, you passed my face, I'm clearing you. What about the next guy?
Exactly. Well, for the sake of our short segment we're trying to do, as we always do a good job of, we
Sorry.
should talk about this next thing because this is cool. Because I actually did not know much about this. We'll bring it up. So you guys have all been seeing. If you watch, I mean, I just watched the Giants game replays on highlights, and you see a couple of the Cleveland Browns, which we beat, which is very exciting. These puffy caps, and you're like, what the heck are these things, right? So these are Guardian helmet caps, and Guardian is the company. And these are actually, so they're now mandated in the NFL for practices. They're not actually that expensive. At least I looked them up. It didn't seem like they're that expensive. Now, what's interesting is I hadn't seen these in the high school level. No one talked about them, and maybe they're using it in practice. But you've seen the practice. They had all those weird helmets and things like that. Well, these are kind of the new thing.
Yeah.
And if you can pull the timeline up, it's kind of interesting to show this. So in 2017, they won this sort of NFL Tech Award. They had validated, and it turned out that they found that it was a 50% reduction in concussions. Now, the problem here, obviously, and I don't want to be knocking this because I think this is anything that can help is always good, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing. I'm not going to poo-poo any technology. That's great.
Yeah.
But obviously, what's the definition of concussion? We saw this with Dr. David Smith, right? It's very broad. There's not like a diagnosis. Like if someone has an ACL tear, like there's very few people that are going to not be like surgeons that can't figure that out, right? It's an ACL tear. You examine it and you get an MRI and it says ACL tear, right? Simple. Concussion, you do a testing system. We've gone over so many different testing systems, right? Those are pretty good, but these are still like, check boxes and try to do your best. Like there's no brain MRI that's going to tell you there's a brain MRI for traumatic brain injury, but you don't want to get to that level. If you can start seeing it, as I think Dr. David Smith said, if you can start seeing on MRI, you're beyond the problem.
Gotcha.
So
yeah.
We have to be aware of that. And then, so now they found this is, so in 2018 is validated, they increase the use, and all of a sudden, boom, 2022 mandated by the NFL for certain players, right? So it was the offensive linemen, defensive linemen, tight ends, and linebackers. Okay, but listen to this. Listen to what we're going to say about the positions. 2023 expanded it to include preseason, regular season, postseason contact practices. So then they added running backs and fullbacks. And then 2024, and this is where it's crazy, they expanded it again. O-line, D-line, linebacker, defensive back. We'll go down the list. The only one of the only ones that not on there, quarterback. So that's interesting. We'll talk that jumps segues right into our thing. And now you're seeing they're allowed, as of this year, that's why you're starting to see them. They're allowed to wear the Guardian caps on their head, on their helmet, as long as the team logo is on there. So this is just super interesting because you're just seeing a piece of, again, we talk about this. We talk about orthopedics, sports all the time, but we love technology. And so this is just something else. And it's simple, right? It's a really simple thing. But if we can reduce these concussive symptoms, anything helps. Now, again, there was something else about, well, maybe if they have a new helmet option, they don't need that. But, players are into this. They're trying to use it. You've seen this. You see a player maybe has this on and the Q collar, which you guys can look at our old episodes. But this piece of tech is pretty interesting.
Yeah, it definitely is, and I think you're bringing up a really good point as far as the technology because, and I apologize, I don't know his name, but one of the head guys at the NFL, I guess their doctor, their head doctor that kind of does the rounds. He said that they've looked at 12 new helmets, 6 of them are being approved going forward, and then one of the questions brought up was this Guardian cap, and they're saying, well, you're kind of just putting the helmet on top of a helmet, and they go, yeah, we understand that, but this is what we have right now. We don't have the amount of testing time, which then leads back to the conversations we have prior when it comes to technology. Like, yeah, they're utilizing it, but it's still not approved, and we're starting to see the groundwork, and that was some of the things that they were insinuating, like we are looking at stuff, but we have not had enough time from testing for it to finally get approved. So this is kind of where we're at right now, but they realize that there's a huge emphasis on trying to figure this out. And we've talked about it before, right? If you have something new, and we've had guests talking about new tech, how long, right? We talked when Winter was on, right? Winter Innovations. How long does it take from concept and testing to finally getting approval and going out there? What are we looking at? 10 years less? What's the normal?
Yeah, 10 years, but I mean, that's the crazy part is like this is the 2017 to 2024 use in the NFL is actually fast, but they don't need like FDA, right? They don't need to have make sure it's safe, right? Because it's padding, right? It's not like it's a different thing, and it's not approved for patients. It's a different, it's paid for approved for NFL players in sports, right? So they just want to show, but they just want to show that efficacy for the NFL to approve it, but it doesn't need to be like mainstream because it's not going through insurance. It's not a medical device, right? So it's just different. But yes, I mean, 10 years is from start to finish. Obviously, there's different things. We've talked about this before. We're not going to go into here. There's faster pathways, but from very basic idea, brand new idea to that 10 years is a pretty good timeline. And that's
Yeah,
a long ways to wait. I mean, it's a long
that's a
ways for
long way.
anybody to wait for anything. But
And
you know,
based on go
this
ahead.
is
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
something, yeah. No, this is like, I mean, but this is they're just trying to this is a dam that is popping.
Mhm,
This is a dam
mhm.
and they're plugging the holes on the dam. And this plus the Tua thing, it just not good for them. Right? They're trying everything they can and the Guardian caps, I mean, no offense, they look a little ridiculous, but nonetheless, if they work, that's awesome. But it just shows like then makes you question, well, like, well, why are we what's why the helmets? Right? Like, why do they need this if they have the helmets?
Yeah, and
Why
that's
do they need
exactly
two
what
helmets?
that they eventually need to figure out, right? It's almost like the NHL, they used to play without helmets, and then it took forever for them to approve it, and then not only that, for the players to buy in, right? As we see, you can wear it, but only a few players are wearing it. We showed a picture of Jonathan Taylor or Julius Peppers or something like that, right? Not everyone is wearing it. And then based on some of the conversations we have had before, prior with our doctors, they're going, yeah, the helmet's never gonna treat it because your brain is gonna swoosh around anyway. It's still gonna move. The helmet is not keeping the brain in place, so you're still gonna have some issues. So it's fascinating. I think that's why we wanted to talk about, because it brings up conversation. It's not just what's happening with Tua, but what's happening with all these players and with the sport and their biggest concern. And if you're concerned with your business, you're going, oh my God, this is happening. Everyone's seeing it. And mommy's not gonna let little Johnny play football, and we're gonna have a crisis of football players on our hands, 20 years from now.
Yeah, I mean, but the other thing you want to say is like I think as orthopedic surgeons, we are so hyper focused on everything except for this. And if you guys are not watching, I'm talking about my face or my head.
Yeah.
So you basically we don't focus on it. Meanwhile, this is one of the things we've seen the most tech, right? We had the Bluetooth conversation stuff. We talked about the helmets. We've talked
Yeah.
about multiple renditions of different helmets. We've talked about areas, the Q collar to increase the pressure inside the brain so that there's less sloshing of the brain when you get hit. We're still scrounging for options, and there's no surgery to fix these problems.
Mm.
There's no pill, there's
Yep.
no medicine. We are literally just using the same device, the helmet, and modifying it. The helmets, they look they look cool, but they don't look that much different than the helmets from 10 years ago, right? Do they? I mean, I don't really see much. I know there's a lot of technology, so I'm not belittling anything in the technology, but the fact is, now that we have to add these caps that are like basically just like mittens on top of there to try to hopefully help
Yeah.
prevent this situation, it just shows the situation that we're in, right? But
Yeah.
at the same point, I think it's awesome. The side thing in this to be, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer because we're talking about concussions and all this stuff
And,
going
and we-
on
and
and
we're
the
talking
negative
about
stuff
a
about it.
sport we love also. Let's be clear, right?
Yeah.
This is what makes it hard, right? These are tough conversations, and this is a sport that we like to watch. You have a New York Giants background, right? I've got, like we talk sports, right? That's our show, right? It's orthopedics and sports, and this is what we do, and this is what we love, right? But at the same time, we can have real conversations, and this is exactly what that is. And it's a
Well,
little maddening at the same time.
and also I want the listeners when they're watching the games to be like, "Oh, that's the Guardian cap. Like that makes sense, right? Like why
Yeah.
are they doing that? Like why is that guy wearing that thing on his head?" Right? Like 'cause that's what I said when I saw it the first time. And you've seen him at practice. And now when all of a sudden we were doing research on Tua and I watch an article on my feed, I see something about the Guardian caps, and it makes
Yeah.
sense now. And you read about it, but it's actually pretty interesting because I didn't realize this route for that long. And the history is really interesting. But you know what? I'm going to wonder. Do you think they're going to be adding the QB to the mandated practice thing?
Yeah. Yeah,
We'll see.
yeah. I know I'm gonna get a text from you and be like, "Hey, guess what?" The same way we look for I look for the Q collar, right? We've talked about the Q collar. I recognize it the second I see somebody wearing it in an NFL game or college. I go, "Oh, he's wearing the Q collar." So just kind of recognize that. Still, my
Well,
favorite tech is the urinal with the with the
I know
players
it is.
that we're talking about.
You're upset because you missed out on the patent on that one. I know you're upset about it. But, I
Oh
think
my
this
god,
great
that
part
was
about
a
the
good show.
podcast is people learn every aspect of sports technology. Right now, they're seeing you watch a show and you go, oh, like they talked about Aaron Rodgers' speed bridge. You know what it is. You talked about
Yeah.
now you see the Guardian caps. Now you see the Q collar. Now you see the new helmets. You see maybe someone mic'd up. You know all those things. You see heads up displays, things like that, like where we're going. And so now we can give you what's the latest tech and how it relates to the medical field. And so, anyhow, we did a good job of staying under 30 minutes like we always do. So,
Yeah, not
but
too
yeah, I
bad.
mean, it's good.
By the way, that heads up helmet that we did a show on for deaf football players has finally been approved. So they had approved it for one game when we first had this discussion. They just recently, maybe a week, 2 weeks ago, somewhere along that timeline, approved it for full time use. So that's
There you go.
another thing with technology, and it got
More to
approved.
come.
And good for those players now to kind of level the field a little bit when it comes to them enjoying the game they love to play. So, anyway, enough of that. Congratulations once again on your award. It's always great talking with you. It's always great having these real discussions. And, we've got more shows headed our way. Thank
Well,
you,
thanks,
Dr.
listeners. Thanks,
Garcia.
everyone.
Take
Always
care.
good. All right. Peace out.
Bye.